I'm Ken Jones from Maryland. I live close to Washington, D.C.
What are some of your memories of liberating Czechoslovakia?
I came to the war very late. We didn't get to France until the second week in January 1945. And at that time, we drove slowly from place to place across France and across Germany. And the thing that struck me most was that from the saturation bombing, the bombs had killed the cattle, and the cows were lying upside down, backward with their feet up in the air, all dead, still in the fields. Cows laying in the field upside down. They had been killed by the bombs. And then we came into Germany, and we went right through the part of Germany which was the Krupp military arsenal for making heavy armaments for the Germans. And the land had been so bombed so many times, it was absolutely pulverized. There were only pieces of bricks. You couldn't even identify which might have been a building. Not possible to see. Occasionally a railroad track that went into the building, but the buildings had been bombed and rebombed again and again. It was dreadful, just awful.
Ruined.
And then we went to Frankfurt, and in Frankfurt we had a walking tour of what had been a Volkswagen, and that's where our headquarters was. The division headquarters was in Tachau, and we had to stay there about 2 weeks. And while we were there, the movie star Ingrid Bergman came to, she was lost. She was supposed to go to Nuremberg in Germany to entertain the troops, and she got lost and came to Tachau at the border in Czech Republic already. So I said, I can help you get back where you want to go. She had a driver and a military vehicle, a chauffeur to take her. And I said, but before you go, I want my men to get a chance to greet you. So I called everybody I could to get as many troops together as I can. And she didn't sing, she didn't dance, she just talked to them. But they enjoyed her so much, and her accent, her Swedish, she's Swedish or Danish or something Swedish, I think, or Norwegian or Swedish, I think. Her accent was delicious, and they just loved looking at her, you know. Then we sent her on her way and marked a map and sent her back, and she had to go back to Nuremberg, which I believe was 140 or 150 more miles. So she'd be driving all day long to get back to where she was supposed to be. But that was a big treat for us. Yeah. Then we came to the last week of the war, and the 16th Armored Division was ordered to take Pilsen. And I was the division information officer. Back in America, my job was educational. I had to publish a daily newspaper with a mimeograph machine. I published a daily newspaper, and I had to give lectures on the progress of the war and speak to the entire division every week. They came in one battalion at a time while I gave them the reports on the war, progress of the war. I had big maps, great big maps, 3 meters big, you know. And I gave them lectures every week. They had to come to hear his speech. But when I got to Europe, I had nothing to do. I was in headquarters company, and I was kind of a fifth wheel. They didn't really need me for anything. So I ended up leading the Red Cross donut girls around. So she would play records and dance with the soldiers, and I couldn't dance with the soldiers because I was an officer. And I did dumb things like that. But that was kind of interesting. But then when I found out that one of our units was assigned to take the brewery, I thought that would be fun. And I was a journalist in private life, and it was newsworthy. I thought this would be a good story. So I attached myself to the unit that went in to liberate the brewery. There were 18 or 20 soldiers in the brewery when we got there, and they held their rifles out to us with their rifles flat across their hand like this. They wanted to turn their rifles over to us to surrender. They were so happy to have the war over. So we stacked the rifles up, and that was about the end of it. Remember, as we gathered up the soldiers and just lined them up in a cluster, just one side of the room, and all the guns were over on the other side of the room. That's what I remember about Pilsen. The very next day, I was given orders by Third Army to go to military government in Germany, and they put me in a car and drove me back to Germany because I'd been to law school, and they thought somebody who was a lawyer would be good for a military government. So they sent me to Würzburg in Germany, and I was military town major there for 4 months after that. So I left. I was only in Pilsen a couple of days. That's all I remember about Pilsen.
Did you continue working as a journalist after the war?
Subsequently, I did, yes. Eventually, I became a missionary and went to Africa. For 6 years, I was in Belgian Congo as a missionary. We got evacuated from Africa 2 times, and then I came back and the church engaged me to be the journalist, public relations person for the Methodist Church in the Washington, D.C. area. So I became a journalist again for 5 years. And eventually, I was appointed to a new church. And I started a church. I served there 10 years. Another one for 7 years in Baltimore. And then I was a district superintendent, which is next to the bishop. District superintendent in charge of 70 parishes in Annapolis, Maryland, which is where the Navy Institution, the Naval Academy was there. And I retired in December of 1945. December of 45 was my last day. I went to the university on the first day of February 46.
How many times have you visited Pilsen since the end of the war?
I've been to Pilsen in 2000, in 2002, 2005, and now 2010. 2002, I brought a team of volunteers to come to the Methodist Church, which is right in front of the 16th Armored Division statue or monument, in front of the bank building. It was a Methodist church, and I'm a Methodist. So I took a volunteer team of 10 people, 5 men and 5 women. We went there for 2 weeks, tore down all the wooden bleachers that had been built up by the Russians. They used the church for an auditorium to teach, a lecture hall for their troops, for the Russian troops. Took over the church and used it for a school. And they wanted us to come and take down all this wooden platforming and all these levels of seating. So 5 men and 5 women did all of that. And then in 2005 we came back and it was all beautiful and restored again. And yesterday morning I went into the church at church time, and the pastor saw me and invited me up front to greet the congregation. So I got to speak to the congregation yesterday morning, and that was very, very wonderful for me.
How do you feel when you're in Pilsen?
Love the affection that the Czech people showed us. People stopped us on the street and wanted to invite us into a bar to have a drink with them or come home to dinner. My wife said they wanted to touch me like we were like we were gods or something, and we never get that kind of attention at home. So we love Pilsen. Pilsen is just wonderful.